Hi everyone, welcome to the Health Tip this week. This is Dr. Marco, and many of you might not know, but this week is actually Balance Awareness Week. So as you know, chiropractors are working with the nerves, the nervous system, the brain, posture, and balance is a really key factor of things that we look for to help people. So there's three really big areas of your body that have a big influence on making sure that you have good balance. So the most important one of the, most of the information coming into your brain is actually coming from your eyes. So it's important that your eyes track properly, that they're kind of, going in the same direction. You don't have one kind of maybe turning in or going up or anything like that. So a lot of visual input to the brain is what keeps your stability. You can sense the horizon, so your body's always trying to keep your eyes level, so it'll know where the horizon is, keep you upright, that kind of thing. So when people come to me, I do some special testing and looking at the eyes and stuff to make sure that that's all centered too. So I'll do some testing. I'm bringing in the finger like this, make sure the eyes can come in strongly, and because sometimes people can they're looking down, and then when they look up, if their eyes aren't sharp, they might not open up their focus properly for the distance, and that can cause some balance issues. So that's a big thing. And even just as a side note, sometimes kids that have focus issues in school, they think they're not focusing on their work because they actually can't focus. Like their eyes don't focus, especially there's some primitive reflexes that little babies have. There's something called the asymmetric tonic neck reflex, where when the child is moving their arm, they're moving their eyes to match it, and it kind of helps the child to kind of get that connection between how distant an object is, and their eyes can focus and they can cross the midline and that kind of thing. Sometimes if those kids are sitting on a certain side of the room, if they have a weakness of that reflex, sometimes when they look up at the teacher, or they're looking up at maybe the board or whatever they're looking at, when they come down to their paper, there's a bit of a lag time between all of those, and sometimes their brain can actually fatigue if their eyes can't focus properly. If they can't converge and look at the paper, one eye might start to drift off, and all of a sudden they say, well, I'm seeing double, I don't even want to look at this anymore, and then they stop paying attention. So it's not like they're losing focus because they can't concentrate. They actually just physically can't focus, and so they actually lose focus for that reason. But sometimes, just generally, other people, like when you get older, sometimes you can have brain cells losing connections and that kind of thing, and you can lose that sharpness of that focus of where you are in space, and that's the biggest thing that can have an impact on balance. So the second big input to maintaining your balance are these little circular things. So inside your ears there's this really small little canals, little circular canals that have a fluid in them that move when you move, and they kind of pick up rotation and that kind of thing. And then there's another part that kind of picks up gravitation, gravity, and linear acceleration. And those kind of things move around and they send signals to your brain to know where you are in space. And occasionally people have one of those, they call them, there's little crystals inside it. There's an idea that sometimes the crystals sometimes break off and just randomly start spinning and moving around, and then that sends a signal, and people get this thing called benign paroxysmal positional vertigo. And so they're just not even doing anything, and all of a sudden they feel like they're spinning and falling. And there's a special maneuver that we do in the office. I had another video about this another time, where there's this maneuver you can do to kind of hopefully reposition the rock, and they have the crystal kind of settle back in the right place, that kind of thing. So these semicircular canals, they're a big input to maintain your balance. But one of the most sort of overlooked one, I think, or is one that's not that obvious for a lot of people, is this. Well, these two bones in your back, and that right there is the joint between those two bones. So there's something called proprioception, which is like knowing where your joints are in space, basically. Even if my eyes are closed, I still know I'm bending that finger and I know exactly where it is. And if my eyes are closed, I can still use my pinky and touch my earlobe and I know exactly where all that is. Because every joint in your body has these little sensors in it that the second you move it, it updates your brain on where you are in space. Now, you need to think about this as humans. We're basically, as far as we know, the only species that kind of walks up on 2 feet all the time. And think about if you're running, for example, you need a lot of information coming up to your brain very quickly. Like, you might be just on 1 foot on the ground. So, like about maybe 10% of the stimulation coming up to your brain comes from the joints in your arms and your legs, but about 90% of it comes from your spinal bones. Because we need it needs to be very, very quick signals to your brain to know where you are. So basically, in concept, your eyes, the vestibular system in your ears, and your spinal muscles and joints all of the signals that those are sending up to your brain, they should all match. If they all match, you should have pretty solid balance. You should be able to go on one leg, raise the other one up, close your eyes, and be able to hang out there for 20, 30, 40 seconds, whatever it is. You should be able to have good balance. When one of those systems is sending a different message than the others, then you start to have issues and you might start to lose balance. So this is really important when people are getting older. They need that strength of stability to know where they are and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of things that can influence balance, a lot of diseases affecting the cerebellum and all this other kind of stuff. But I just wanted to kind of focus on this part here because that's a big thing that chiropractors do when we work on people's spines all the time. So if I actually just draw you a cross-section of the spinal cord. That's sort of like if I cut the spinal cord in half and you're looking down on it like this. So this is like a cross-section. This is the back part and this is the front part. Pretty much this whole back area here, all of this, it's almost like up to half of the spinal cord is dedicated to vibration sense or light touch or position sense, the positioning of your joints. So almost like half of the spinal cord is dedicated to knowing where you are in space, sending up those signals up to your brain so you know where you are. So when in chiropractic, when people have what we call a subluxation in the spine, one bone on top of the other, they should be moving properly. If they stop moving, they can actually start to send less stimulation to your brain, and all of a sudden there's less signals of where your body is in space coming up to your brain. And that can, over time, if that leads to, it can lead to less connections in the brain, less firing of neurons so they don't connect to each other. And so when there's less connection in your brain, obviously you can have less balance and those kind of things. So it's really important that all of the bones in your back are moving freely all the time, as much as they can, to maintain stimulus to your brain so your brain knows where your body is and your spine is so that you can maintain upright posture. So, like I say, when we come here, we can do vestibular exercises or eye exercises for people if we're finding imbalances there. But just generally, when people are going to chiropractors, that's the biggest thing that we can help people with their balance issues, is to make sure that all the bones in your back move properly. So this is a really key issue. We talk about this a lot. So there's normally a good forward curve in the neck here like this. So hopefully you can see this. So these are the joints here. These joints, if you have proper curve in the neck, they're meshing one on top of the other. So the receptors in there will be able to send lots of information to the brain of where you are in space. But when people start to lose the curve in their neck, what happens is those joints, they're not quite as flush one on top of the other. So if I use my hands, the proper curve in your neck, the joint on top and the joint below will be touching each other like this, okay? But if you start to lose the curve in your neck, there's less surface area touching each other, so there's less receptors sending signals to the brain of where you are in space. So losing that curve in your neck is a really bad thing for knowing where you are and balance issues and stimulating your brain and everything else. So maintaining the curve, like I said, we've talked about this lots and lots of times, the curve in the neck is really important for so many functions of the brain, the body, and everything else. So, texting and all that stuff, we got to really make sure our kids are upright and, getting chiropractic care, making sure all the bones are moving properly. So we can hopefully prevent, children growing up with balance issues, but very much helping older people have more stability and being more stable in their body and having more input to their brain so they know where they are. So having regular chiropractic care to the spine is one of the best things you could do to maintain good balance. So that's your health tip for this week. Hopefully that was helpful. Please share it, and we will see you next time.